Few things are for sure in this life, but this is. If we live for any substantial amount of time, we will encounter grief due to the loss of a loved one. Not something any of us ever want, and we all handle it differently. This podcast is to feature those who have done purposeful and meaningful things through their grief. These people featured on here are normal folks, just like you and me, who were thrust into a place they never wanted to be in their lives. A painful place. As they moved through their pain, they realized that something worthwhile, something for the greater good, could come out of the unthinkable. I'm sure that none of them would ever consider themselves to be a hero, but when I searched the definition of the word hero, I found this: a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And that fit. And so it's my privilege to bring you the remarkable stories of these heroes in grief. Hi, everyone. This is Tom, your host for the Heroes in Grief podcast, and the response has been incredible so far, and I want to thank you for that. It's getting out to people, and they're letting us know that it's helping them, and that is what it's all about. I want to make you aware of a way that you can support this podcast without having to spend 1 cent, and that is through affiliate marketing. I've set up affiliate marketing for online shopping. If you do online shopping, then I have links to all the major retailers, most of them anyways, and I can provide them for you so that when you buy online through those links, you'll help support the podcast through the percentages that we get. It doesn't cost you anything more. You just shop like you regularly would on the sites that you love. It's very easy. All you have to do is shop. And that's it. Just let me know the links to the places that you want to shop at, and I will provide the affiliate links so that you can do it. If you want more information on this, you can go to heroesandgrief.com. It takes you to the Linktree page where a video explains it in a little more detail. But you can always email me at tom@heroesandgrief.com, and I can answer questions for you. But you can support the podcast that way, and it's very easy, very simple, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Isn't that great? Thank you. Now here's today's episode. Okay. I'm interested to learn. Very nice. I love it. I was looking at some of your things there, so I appreciate it. Where are you located?
In New York City.
How are you? Okay,
Yeah.
good. I saw you were at Columbia, correct?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
I studied there.
Very nice. I took David Kessler's grief educator course.
Oh, wow.
And we did have a Columbia professor on there speaking. She, I think she worked with therapists and that, and she was speaking about how grief is actually an elective, that it's not a required course for those, becoming therapists and things, which is outrageous, but
Yes, was this Dr. Heidi Horsley?
yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's Heidi. Yeah.
Small world. She's interviewed me a few times for a cable network.
Really?
Yeah, in fact, she did one this past summer. Three this past summer. So it's such a small
Fantastic.
world.
Yes. Well, the grief world is interesting. So I've had so many interesting threads that come through it all and everything. And I know you're into mindfulness, and I'm very much into that as well. And so all the interconnectiveness is amazing. And the ripple
And I'm
effect.
so sorry for, I don't know your full story, but, when we do grief work, we all have a story. And I'm sorry
Yes.
for what you've been through.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So it's very casual. If you've listened to any, I'm not sure if you have, but it's, I like
Over
to keep
summer,
it very
yeah.
casual, and I'm going to get the right. I don't
And
wanna
also
look
you
too-
interviewed Reshma recently. I heard that one.
Yes. That was wonderful. Oh, every one of them is so enriching for me. This is therapeutic for me too. So
I
yeah,
imagine.
I'm only little over 2.5 years into my journey since
Okay.
losing my son. Yeah. So
I'm so sorry about that.
thank you. But this all helps, and this is something that I had to do. The universe said this is what's got to happen. So I needed to do it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Heroes in Grief today. Thank you for tuning in, as usual, and love to have you with us. And I am just very intrigued today, my guest today is Sweta Vikram, and she is an adjunct professor from Columbia. University, and also an international speaker, international bestseller of 14 books, and she's a certified grief coach. Many other things. She does a blog and a podcast on her site and everything. I will say it right from the beginning. You can go to her site and I'll spell it out for you. It's SWETA dot or period, whichever you prefer. And then it's VIKRAM.com. So you can go there and review things as we're speaking here. But Sweta has agreed to come on, and I'm very privileged to have you because I've seen you've done some amazing things. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me join you for this conversation, Tom. It was Diwali yesterday, which is the Hindu New Year. And I've been hearing from my clients, and people are like, it's complicated. I am happy, but I'm also sad. So the timing of this couldn't be better because we're leading into holiday season, and grief is so nuanced. Like, just when you think you're little above the surface, I don't know if there's a second wave, third wave, or just an unending wave, and it hits you. So I'm honored to be doing this. It's sad we've gone through what we've gone through, but it's also an honor to be able to hold these conversations and to hold space for others.
It is. It is. I appreciate that very much. So you mentioned we've gone through these things. What brought you into this arena?
I still get goosebumps when I say this. May 2023, absolutely unexpectedly, lost my father, who was my everything in the world, like my safe space, my confidant. He was very unlike any dad I had met or known. And this was coming from my friends. I'd seen him 4 weeks prior. I was in India. I'd met with him, and there were no such signs of, oh my God. And then while we are going through all the rituals, and this is around my mom's 9th death anniversary. So you're also navigating all of that. My father-in-law passes away. So
Oh,
it's
my
like,
gosh.
yeah, so it's the
I'm so
grief of two.
sorry.
Thank you. It's the grief of two families in two different cities in a country where we no longer live. The grief hierarchy, all of that. And, my husband, knock on wood, still has a mom. So his grief is still grief, but it's also caring for the parent that's alive. For my
Yeah.
brother and I, we just became adult orphans. So my grief was different. We were all grieving, trying to hold space. And I know for me, I put my self-care and grief on hold for a while because it was just showing up. I would tell my husband, I have senioritis. I'm a veteran. I lost my mom 9 years ago. So I can be there for you, but it's all of that put together and things that people would say. I want to believe most people think they don't know how to support in silence. They have to use words. But some of those things were hurtful about whose grief mattered more, how one should move on. And now this chapter is done. What next? And I'm like, or people would tell me about about someone's journey, but never about the journey, the destination of when everything became better. And I'm like, that's very relative. Who are we to tell someone what their grief journey should look like, what their relationship meant or didn't mean? And for me, I was in India every 3-4 months. And now, Tom, 2.5 years later, I've just gone back once because what is my identity? Who is there for me? And people don't understand these nuances. When you have a full-fledged, healthy family, you don't understand these nuances of losing that one person changes who you are and your relationship with everything. So I think all of this brought me to grief work.
What were you doing during that time? Were you obviously you were a professor, but what were you involved in?
So I'll tell you something. I'm an Ayurvedic doctor, and Ayurveda is the science of life, right? And so I'm High Pitta, which is one of the constitutions, the doshas. I poured myself into work. That's the only way I know how to survive. And then to be supportive for my husband, my brother, my mother-in-law, whoever was impacted by this grief. So I don't think I've ever had the privilege or the personal capacity to take that time and sit and say, no, this is about me. I do, and then I burn out and I fall sick. And that's when it's like, oh, and so, we were very fortunate. We had like condolence visitors. So like for 3 months, we had people visiting. So I was also doing a doctorate then to navigate grief, to navigate this change in life, to navigate two losses while holding a healthy atmosphere at home where my husband, I was like, we are not competing about whose relationship was what. Also being very clear about my husband was very close to my dad, right? So, and my father-in-law and I had our own bond. So I'm like, when I am talking about your dad, I don't want you to say that if you're feeling this, imagine what I'm feeling, or vice versa. We have to hold space for our own grief, but also the relationship that each of us shared with our respective father-in-laws. So I think it was just a very, now when I think about at that point, you're just in survival mode. I think most of us, you just try to get through the day, being very cognizant of how am I eating, how am I moving, am I still being kind? They were driving factors because I didn't know about these things when my mom passed away. I was also much younger. She was very young. So I think I came to grief with anger. This time around, I think I was just really in survival mode. And then when I wrote this book called The Loss That Binds Us, it has 108 tips to navigate grief. I think in writing this book, it became clear to me, oh, once again, it's old habits die hard. I did the same thing. I prioritized everybody else, but my own needs. So it was busy, to answer your question, busy with work, with workouts. I couldn't go back to any familiar workouts. I've been doing yoga for over 20 years. I teach trauma informed yoga. Anything familiar felt like a betrayal to my nervous system. So I started going to Kundalini yoga. My dad was that person, Tom, who was my safe space. And we are not one of those Hallmark TV people. No, we argued, we fought. There were cold wars, there were silent wars. But I just knew no matter what, he was always going to be there for me. And I think that in losing him, I've lost that anchor. Because my husband is a partner. He's not my parent. And he also plays other roles. So I never want that pressure on him. I know he's there, but like that stalwart support, that unconditional love where if I call and say, I'm tired, I need a break, the only person who would put everything on hold would be my dad. And I think in losing that, I've lost that anchor. So I am constantly doing things in my life that make me feel grounded. And I'll be honest, on some days, despite an hour of yoga, 40 minutes of meditation and breath work, I still don't feel anchored. And I think that's the journey of grief and accepting, even with difficulty, that I will always, for those of us we've lost loved ones, there will be a cloud overhead. Doesn't mean it's a sad cloud. It's a cloud of depression or anxiety. It's that cloud that reminds you that part of you died with the person whom you lost. Whether you cremated, buried, whatever be the ritual, there's a part of you that dies. And so the new part that's grown back, you are still adjusting to it.
Yeah, it's totally different, and you're in a context of who you are as yourself, who you always are, but then this whole different element comes in, and yeah, it's very complex. And but you said some things that are so applicable to people, and that it's all right to recognize these things that are happening, like the even though you were grounded in the things that you have done, your practices, yoga and these things, that it wasn't the same. And it's not the same when you lose that anchoring element. I felt the same when you were talking about that about my mom. She lived to 95 and
beautiful.
And yeah, and she was always there. I was the youngest in the family. I was with her the longest. And so yes, that anchor is gone. I still and people used to say this, and I thought, no, that doesn't really happen. But I have felt at times, and it just comes out of nowhere, where it's like, oh, I need to call or talk to mom about that,
Yes.
and that's not feasible, but that happens, and it's okay. Those things are all normal and all okay. And too many people just don't recognize that these things are okay in their life when this happens, that all these different dynamics happen, and it's very complex. It intrigues me, actually, and
Mm.
it's not a happy occurrence for sure for it to happen to you, but it is intriguing. And I sometimes sit there and think, wow, that is really complex, how your emotions, your mind, your mindset, whatever, can just go all these different places so quickly. And you can house all of that too, and you can keep that in a good place. And I think that's the type of things that you bring about for people, right? Is to help them bring that all in alignment and be part of their whole person. Is that the kind of things that you do?
Yes, thank you for what you just said. It's so beautiful about being real. And that's why a conversation, a podcast like yours matters, because very often, unless someone has gone through grief, or they don't get what grief really means. They might get it intellectually. But even for you, Tom, or for me, until we went through what we went through, we didn't know how it would impact us. Firstly, no one thinks, unless I don't think anyone can prepare for this.
Mm-hmm.
So the struggle is, and for anyone who's listening to us, the struggle is even you don't know how you would respond when this big change happens in your life. And that's okay. And like Tom, you mentioned that you could be going through this. And then there's a moment, I still do that. It was Diwali yesterday. And I almost like, oh, I'll just call that. And then after oh, okay. And then you go through the motions of the day. So you could be smiling and there's a tear in your eye. And
Mm-hmm.
that becomes your life instead of fighting that these nuanced emotions where you're feeling joy. I feel like I feel joy and sadness in the same breath pretty much all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And very often people fight that because there's not enough support available. I've gone through this. I like from what my friends and cousins will say, like, I like to have fun. So which means I'm cracking jokes and being funny. And my dad was like that. He was a wise ass, pardon my French, but like, we have my dad, my brother and I, we have dark humor as our thing. But there was a moment where, I just wanted to be known as nothing, just a human being. And I felt people who couldn't handle the lack of light in my personality just fell along the way. So it was also the side effect of grief, which I didn't think was real, because I'd been there for those people when they navigated grief. And now in retrospect, I'm like, oh, thank you for the gift, because I had so much, and no pun intended, like dead weight in my life, right? So there's no
Mm-hmm.
anger, but it's also like I also need light. I can't always be the light in people's lives. And if others have that expectation that I'll always be funny and light, and if they are going through something heavy, I'll be that person. It's an unrealistic expectation. So I think that was the other side of grief that I saw. People are who they've always been. We ignore that side because we're so busy with other things. Most people don't change overnight. And grief just shows you the sides to people which you had been conveniently ignoring because there were so many other things to focus on.
Yeah, there's no time, it seems, when
Right.
things happen, right? I always
Yeah.
talk about how I'm more empathetic than I've ever been now experiencing the loss of my son, but I also am so focused, and I kind of keep in with blinders on. I can't do too much. I can't spread out to everybody. And I used to be a person who would be like that. Like I was always looked upon as, oh, you're good at this and you can do that. And so I always wanted to foster that. Now I'm just like, nope, I know my limits and I'm straight on with that, and let the chips fall where they may. And yeah, so some of
I love
those
that.
times, yeah, people, you know, I honestly, and it's rash, but I don't care what people think about that anymore. There's no time to sit there and second guess or worry about your insecurities and those type of things. Everything changes, and I'm on a path to hopefully enrich people in whatever time I encounter them, and that's the way I look at it. I can only be responsible for my sphere around me. That's all I really can do. So I try to make that the best that I can in every interaction, and that's how I focus on it.
I love that. And thank you for your honesty, because that's how I function as well. And it's also very practical, because you
Mhm.
realize you cannot help 5,000 people. But if you can truly help 5 people, that's a good deed done. That's 5 more people feeling better about themselves, feeling more healed. And I often talk about this, that, for those of us, much like you, I used to spread myself thin, trying to help 5 million people. That's a whole other conversation about our own baggages, our traumas that we carry. And when you lose someone you love, someone you really cared about, it creates a sense of urgency. I don't think it's insecurity. Oh, I might die tomorrow. I've never had that. But I
Mm.
also know not everyone has the privilege to grow old. So none of us know how much time we have. There will be those weak moments, weak days where you are stuck in that emotional funk. But 90% of the times, it's like you said, blinders on focus, because it's not for others to understand how I function. It's not for me to explain to others how I function. This is my world. This is what helps me stay sane, healthy, grounded, and empathetic. And
Mhm.
with my dad gone, like I always joke about this. He was my recharge station. I don't have a recharge place. Like a semester gets over teaching, I don't have a place to go to. I mean, I have friends, I have family, I have a brother, but it's not the same. When you go visit someone, you feel obliged, like I should be more present. With my dad, we could both check out. We could sit next to
Mm.
each other, eat dumplings, and completely check out. And it was so convenient, because end of the semester, that's what I needed, silent presence. But
Yeah.
the world we live in, that's not okay. If you're not saying something, you can tell I'm a chatterbox. It's like, are you okay? No, I'm okay if you can. So I have that at home with my husband. But we all need different spaces to go to just be. So now I do solo trips at the end of my semester. That's one of the ways I take care of me, or a trip with a girlfriend, where we have this understanding that we don't constantly have to talk or do things together. We can just be with each other, hang out, connect, but also give each, because being an adult, no one tells you about this, is also heavy at times.
Mm. Yeah. No expectations, right?
No,
That's
yes,
just enjoy time. I was
yes.
thinking about that too as I was talking about it, and I think that was it was my self-feeding. I needed that. I needed to
Mm,
be that person for people or whatever. And now I simply just know I have limitations, and I can only do so much. So I'm not so much in the grief work that I do. I have always presented, so I kind of gravitate more toward the speaking or group situations and not one-on-one so much. I'm willing to talk to people, but I'm not going to invest all my energies into that, because I know I can't do that. I just simply don't have that capacity right now to be able to do that. So in the past, I would sit there and say, "Oh my gosh, you're failing at this," and you need to be there for that person and all of this. And now I simply just know the limitations, so that's all right. So so what I wanted to ask you a little bit about the Ayurvedic, right? Is that how you
yes.
say it?
Ayurvedic, yeah.
Um, so what is that, if you needed to explain to the layperson what that involves?
So Ayu means life, Veda means science. It's the science of life. Ayurveda is the oldest medical system that came out of India 5,000 years ago. And the focus is prevention and maintenance versus treatment.
Hmm.
So that's the way. If we can eat the right way, live the right way, move the right way, pay attention to our world, disease might not occur for the most part, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we can do preventative. So in India, there are hospitals, there are Ayurvedic hospitals that are in the United States. It works more as prevention, maintenance, and coaching. But in India, there are proper hospitals set up. There's a department of psychiatry, there's department of surgery, there's department of gynecology, and everything is happening through counseling, diet, and herbs. So the concept of Ayurveda, much like Chinese medicine, is there are 5 elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. The combination of 2 elements makes dosha. So ether and air together makes vata dosha. Fire and water together makes pitta dosha. And earth and water makes kapha dosha. We all have all of these 3 doshas in varying quantities, but most people are a combination of 2 doshas, and that's your DNA, that's your blueprint. So how that applies in grief work is, why does one person become so anxious during grief? One person is that high performer, making sure, uh, you know, the funeral home conversation is happening for me, like the cremation is happening, or is the food, the caterer in order? Have we sent out email? Have we let the family know? And then there might be people who just shut down and don't want to move. So
Hmm.
what I love about Ayurveda is it's a very compassionate lens. Instead of saying, why won't you move? We address disease is in 6 stages from an Ayurvedic lens. So if that person is not moving, they might be in an imbalance.
Hello, friends. I just wanted to take a brief break here in the podcast to make you aware of a very exciting partnership that Heroes in Grief has just formed, and that is with Get Griefy Magazine. I'm going to let their founder and editor-in-chief, Kara Sanchez, tell you all about it.
Hey, Heroes in Grief listeners. Life after loss isn't easy, but it can be colorful and full of possibilities. Meet Get Griefy Magazine, a vibrant resource filled with inspiring stories of life after loss, expert advice, and voices from everyday grievers and thought leaders. Together, they're here to help guide you toward the side of life that's left to be lived fully and authentically. Dive into Get Griefy for free on issue or snag a print copy on Amazon. Connect with us on Instagram at Get Griefy Magazine or visit getgriefymagazine.com to explore, join our thriving small business collective, or discover advertising opportunities. Let's embrace life after loss, boldly and together.
And now back to our episode.
So through diet, lifestyle, breath work, Ayurvedic herbs, we bring them back to that place of balance, which is their dosha, which is their blueprint. So I've had mental health practitioners, Western practitioners, who have worked with me one-on-one. And much like you, Tom, I do more workshops and speaking engagements as opposed to one-on-one grief coaching. But when I have done, that's what they said. And it was very interesting. They were like, medicine or talk therapy might not be for everyone. So can we do something else? And they reached out to me for Ayurveda, because it's, if there's this person whose way of navigating grief is not moving, being face down in a pint of ice cream and potato chips, instead of judging, oh, you don't want to take care, it's like, can we work on those? It's habits over motivation. So can we work on those imbalances? So instead of pint, maybe you eat a bowl of ice cream and slowly make it a weekend treat where it's like one scoop instead of an entire pint on a daily basis. So you see, it's a very science of life, and you start to notice the difference, because there's the gut biome connection that we talk about today. Ayurveda has been talking about it for 5,000 years. What you eat will impact how you think, and how you think will impact what food choices you make, and all of that impacts your grief cycle.
Mm-hmm. So no condemnation, really,
No
right?
condemnation from self or from others or towards others. And I think a big issue in the world today, whether it's in the grief world or otherwise, is the question of self-love and worthiness. We've been told healthy people look a certain way, happy people look a certain way, happiness looks a certain way. So it all starts from self-awareness, getting to know you, living in self-awareness and mindfulness. So when something feels off, like, oh yeah, this doesn't feel like me. So doing those check-ins, and then Ayurveda comes in because it empowers you with these tools. And then, you work with an Ayurvedic doctor to figure out, okay, what can I do next? I know this doesn't feel like me. What can I do next to empower my own healing journey? So there's no dependability.
Mm-hmm. I love that, because I think about that a lot when, for instance, me and my diet, right?
Right.
I'm probably about 15, 20 pounds overweight, maybe. And so I've always thought of working on that. And I'm always like, I got to find someone who just take the context of what I eat,
Right.
what I eat on a regular basis, and help that, because I'm probably not going to change, or I can change gradually, but everybody tries to go on this diet and it changes you dramatically, and you're not going to respond to that well. So I would like to say, okay, like you said, eat less of this and maybe replace it with something like this. If you try that, and maybe you can like that, and that'll help sort of change the whole energy level on a gradual basis. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think about is it go in alignment too? Because I meditate and I think about vibration levels and getting on the
Yes.
right vibrational plane of helping. And I've heard this in health aspects too, where if you're at a different vibrational level, that it's going to help you to be a healthier person or overcome health issues and things like that too.
Oh, very much so. And in fact, I always say this to my clients, unless you felt really good, you don't know what feeling good means. And what I mean by
Mm.
that is most people think, oh, I'll pop that pill. So what if I'm lactose intolerant? Oh, wine gives me a heartburn. I'll pop this pill. I said, so we've become lazy, the human race. But when you stop doing that and you actually start to feel, oh my God, I can do this. My body can go through the night without feeling gassy, bloated, constipated, diarrhea. Like it's mind boggling to people. And I always tell them, you did it. I was just there as your guide without judgment. And also another thing I wanted to touch upon was, Tom, because emotions. Ayurveda talks about mind, body, consciousness, the emotions, right? So when someone is actually face down in a pint of ice cream, what is going on with their life?
Mm.
If we don't address the emotions, then you're basically punishing them by saying, you touch sugar, you're irresponsible. That language might have gotten them addicted to the food that they're binging on. So,
Mm.
so it's something to think about. Like, can we bring kindness into a language? I remember one of my clients was like, I cannot give up wine. I said, don't. Oh, really? I said, can you cut down? Oh, okay. And I was like, oh, it's summer. So can you do a sweeter white wine like a Moscato as opposed to a Pinot Noir, less acidic? Oh, I could do that. So it's these small changes. And then eventually this person is like, yeah, I didn't want that glass. And I was like, so did you pour yourself one? It's like, no. And I was like, that's the other thing. Food can be nectar or poison. So if you're going to have that dessert or if you're going to have that glass of wine, maybe do it when you're celebrating. Your body has cellular intelligence. It'll process it differently versus if you use it as a tool, as a coping mechanism. So I think Ayurveda also talks about these conversations where it's a life of permission versus a life of deprivation. And it brings, and thinking of grief again, like telling someone timeline is over, now get better, move on, smile, family pose, picture. It doesn't work.
Mm.
Ayurveda is like, you still might have a tear in your eye, and that's okay. It takes a lot lesser to fight, to acknowledge a thought than it does to fight a thought. And because, you meditate and you talk about mindfulness, I'm sure you can understand that. Like every time you meditate, how I almost never have a meditation where I have no thoughts.
Mhm.
And there is nothing called a bad meditation. It's, I, I might be thinking about a grocery list, but I sat down and, I do transcendental meditation and my teachers will often say, every time that thought comes, it's stress release, stress in your body. But we don't hold that space for that stress. For us, stress has to be monumental. Oh, a job, a health, a loss. It could be your daily life
Yeah.
that is creating that stress. So holding space for it is another beautiful way in which Ayurveda is like, can we look at your doshas? Can we look at your mind? Because in the yoga world, we talk about, oh, sattva, but too much sattva, that means you'll never be motivated to do anything. Too much rajas or passion is you will burn out. Tamas
Yeah.
can be great because you need tamas to sleep, to slow down, but too much tamas is the dark side of a human being. And there's too much darkness in the world today. So see, you take these modern world concepts, but it's this ancient science and art of living. You apply it. And there's just this level of, I see you, I feel you versus you're so terrible.
Yeah, I think people don't understand the capacities that we really have
Yes.
to hold all these things and be able to, and sometimes the things are right in front of them, like you said, maybe try a white wine instead of a red wine. And oh, I never thought of that. And it's right there in front of you. You
Right.
just need a little guidance on that. So, but we have the capacity to do it, and that's one of the biggest things that people, the self doubt, people feeling inadequate. It's a huge cancer in our society. That
Mm.
is so prevalent. And there was one time, and I was a Christian pastor for a time, and I used to find that when I would talk to people and they were having problems, almost every one of them came back to their self-worth, really.
Mm.
That every problem they were having for some reason could be directed back to their self-worth, and whether their need for something or their inability to express something or whatever it may be. And I was like, it's epidemic, and people just have such a bad impression of themselves. And maybe it's societal, I don't know, but you know we can instill some confidence in them and abilities, and like you said, it's them doing it. So the small goals, as you reach them and realize that you're actually making progress, and people fail to track those so many times, when the small victories and all of those type of things.
That's so true. And I think a lot of it's also conditioning of
Mm.
we have these labels of what functioning human being looks like, what a successful human being looks like, what a happy marriage looks like. Nothing is that simple. Every happy marriage is unhappy at least 4 times a day. I just made up that number, but it's human beings, right? Every friendship is unpleasant and then it becomes pleasant. Nothing in this world is permanent. Everything is transient. And we've been conditioned, women even more than men in some ways, to look at yourself from the eyes of others.
Mm.
And I would
Yeah.
always tell my dad, I don't know how, I think in losing my mom, I was in my 30s then. So I think more rough around the edges with my emotions. I was just more angry and self-righteous and how could this happen? All of that. Versus with dad, I was just a different person. I'd also had 10 years of experience of grieving, and I would say, more mature in that journey. But I remember like telling my dad that it all comes back to exactly what you said, Tom, self-love and self-worth. And I would tell him, you are not a plate of brownies or samosa. It's not your job to keep others happy, just as it's not mine. It's my job to be kind to myself and everybody else, because everybody is fighting a battle. And there are days where I'm spent and I don't have the capacity. I shut down. Instead of being unkind, I'll be silent. That is an option,
Hmm.
because none of us can have endless capacity to always pour, but it's important to know it all starts with you. If you can't be happy with your own company, how sad is that, that we
Right.
always need people for everything? It's nice, the human connection. Loneliness is another epidemic, so it's good to have that human connection, but you also need to be connected to yourself. Otherwise, if we depend on others for a self-worth, for that peace, they are going through their own stuff. Now, today, they are mean and you think, oh, I've done something wrong. Versus if you're connected with yourself and you say, no, that's about them. They're going through their own stuff. I'm sending a prayer over them, but I don't have to get sucked into their drama. And I think mindfulness, grief work, Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, it just puts you on a different path. It can feel very lonely because most people can't relate to it, and you feel like you're
Hmm.
vibrating at a different frequency. And so
Yeah.
you lose a lot of people who are, and this is not about, oh, I'm at a higher level, not at all. But most people don't want to move from where they are because that's the sweet spot. Denial helps them sleep. But when you start to do this work, you start vibrating at a different frequency, and you might feel, oh, well, there are not many people around me. But once you make space for, there was a soul contract, it's over, no anger. The universe sends lighter souls your way who are at your frequency. And then you learn everything is transient. These
Yes.
relationships are beautiful, but don't be too attached to them.
They do start attract you do start attracting those in your space for sure. I
Absolutely.
I thought of something as you were talking there, and this has happened with me. And as you attempt to reach that higher vibration, and I do spend time meditation alone, but there's times when the ego, the humanness, brings a fear in. I'm wondering what you would say to people who have that fear, as you mentioned, about being alone with yourself. Some people are scared of that. And I have actually had a fear, even though I'm so intrigued by it and I believe firmly in it. I have had a fear sometimes of like, diving in, like really meditating deep or wanting to connect with Jeff and having that happen. And there's a fear that I can't explain because I don't want that. And I don't believe in that. And I want it more than anything else. But why, what about that fear? Where do you think that comes from?
I think anything which is unfamiliar creates a sense of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And the world we live in, where I really believe those who have passed on, we aren't the only ones missing them. They are missing us too. So if there's a sign, people put it under voodoo category. Oh, that's woo-woo, that's voodoo. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, but if it brings me peace, why not? So
Mm-hmm.
to anyone who's wondering about the fear, lean into that fear. It's okay. Don't fight it. That's part of the process. But also lean into, like you said, that you want to connect deeper with Jeff. Also lean into that. So I'll give you an example. My dad used to wear Old Spice. I'm wearing Old Spice here around my wrist today because we're talking about this. Because it makes me feel connected to him. Diwali was all about my mom because she was an incredible chef. And like what I cook, we had friends over. We introduced them to our traditions, the culture. It was all about, and I do feel all of a sudden, my mother loved mogra, which is Indian jasmine. I could smell jasmine in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people would say, that's insane. She's dead. Well, she's also trying to comfort me. Why? It's not like I've abandoned my family, left my house, and now I'm running down the streets of New York chasing mogra. I'm not doing that. I sit with it. I have 2 tears in my eyes and I'm like, thank you for reaching out, because this makes me also feel less abandoned, but this also makes me feel anchored. You lose both your parents and I'm adult orphan. I could go around smacking anyone who's keeping an eye out for me, right? It's like that badly behaved child, right? But this also, and I've never been that person, but my point being, this also makes me feel accountable. From the other realm, they are connecting with me. I dream of my dad more than my mom. I was also much closer to my dad every week, sometimes 5 days in a row. So, and that's how I feel connected. Sometimes I try to decipher the message. Sometimes I'm like, I don't have the capacity. So don't feel that guilt either, where you don't have the capacity to spend 5 hours thinking about it.
Yeah, I
We
love it.
are right. And grief is so universal, but we are all on that individual journey. And very often the fear comes from lack of spaces where we feel heard or seen about these experiences. And I talk about mysticism a lot. I'll tell you, when I was writing this book, Tom, I was staying in the space which was by the water, and it was a hotel. And they sponsored 2-3 days of my stay because I was like, I can't work on this book from home. I might dissolve into a puddle of tears, and everybody's nervous system is dysregulated then, right? So I was like, I need a space where I can be what I want to be or who I end up being for those 3 days and come back to myself. So I remember I worked on some bit. I was feeling very emotional. I know walking, for anyone who gets emotional, walking can be really a good friend. It's a great release. So I'm walking by the water, and there are 2 monarch butterflies. For an hour, they were with me. And one of them was in my face and the other was very quiet. So at the end of the walk, I called up my husband. I said to him, your dad and my dad visited. And he's very open to he's like, how do you know which one was which? I said, the quiet one was your dad gliding by. The one in my face, annoying me, was obviously my dad. But, I was really I wouldn't say emotional, right? But I was so emotional at the end of those 3 days where I'd polished the draft ready to send it to the publisher. And I felt they were there. They were there protecting me, letting me know I am not alone. And I think the thing with grief is you can have these conversations, you can talk to a therapist, you can attend grief groups, but you're still isolated because what you're feeling, only you feel. And when
Yes.
there is this connection, I would suggest to anyone, unless, you're hurting yourself, then I'm not making those recommendations, but it just feels like it makes me feel closer to the one I've lost. Why not? If you feel their presence, there are things that I cook. Some days it tastes like my cooking, which is, people tell me they love it. Some days it tastes like my mom's. And I'm like, oh, you did show up. You did add your love because mom's cooking is different. So I'm like, again, it makes me feel safe and loved and anchored because my biggest challenge in this grief journey is the amount of work I do to feel anchored. And I've never been an unanchored person. Even as a teenager, I never got into trouble. Like, I was always that person who was grounded. And right now I have so much of work that I do because, like I said, the roof and the foundation, they're both gone. So I'm holding on to something stable, whatever that looks like on a given day. Sometimes it's practices. Sometimes it's the work that I do. Sometimes it's my marriage. Sometimes it's cooking. But there's no one thing. And for me, that's very hard because I like predictability. I like routines. Nothing is boring to me if there's a routine, right? So it's good for my nervous system. Now my nervous system is like on any given day, you just have to find what stabilizes you. Like when I would wake up for 9 years, my dad and I had a ritual. My mornings and his evenings, we had chai together. Sometimes we didn't even talk. We would just look at each other. He was watching his stuff. I was doing my stuff. And now I don't even enjoy chai. Like, it was such a ritual. And finally, this summer, I was like, I'm changing my morning chai. I'm switching it up with a cup of coffee. Because the person who introduced me to chai is gone. Chai no longer holds that meaning. My husband is not a caffeine drinker in the mornings. Over weekends, we'll have a cup of tea or coffee together, which is very different. But that ritual. So also being okay with saying, that part of my life is gone. Just because I stopped drinking morning chai doesn't mean I love my dad any less. So sometimes the fear is also that, like, am I forgetting them? I just have memories left of these rituals by removing, I wouldn't even say getting, by removing them, am I removing a part of them? And I finally had to make peace. Like, no, I am helping myself in my healing journey because I'm hanging on to something that doesn't exist. Instead of waiting to hear his voice, see his face on a video call for 2 years, that's not happening. So I'd rather do other things. And I wake up very early. Like, in yoga and Ayurveda, we say, wake up 90 minutes prior to sunrise. It's Brahma Muhurta. It's the best time for meditation, writing. I do all of that, but there is this emptiness. So I'm like, the emptiness will be there. I embrace it. I won't fight it. This is my life until my last breath. I will always know that every morning when I wake up, I'll pray to the gods of anchor, like, please help me feel anchored today. Because even though I'm grounded as a person, that my parents are gone. And so for anyone, whoever you've lost, they anchored you in some way. So it's not about finding a replacement. It's just finding something, a habit, a practice, a ritual that makes you connect with your today.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we never will lose the love that we have for those we've lost. Never. So, so many people hold on to too many things and don't start progressing on in their new existence. And so, it's very important. I love walking as well. By the way, I love it. And yeah, and I loved what you said about diving into it, because I have done that sometimes. I've said, okay. I have that feeling of resistance for whatever reason, but then it's like, no, show me, prove it to me, show me. And it happens. And so, whatever comfort level, whatever message at that time when I'm meditating or whatever the case is, whatever comes, and that soon subsides too. It's like anything else, like the grocery list or anything else. You recognize it, it's there, and then let it go, and receive what's there for you. And it's the same thing in all the practices you're talking about, and changing your existence as it is now. And it's different, but that's okay. And having all those feelings, having all those complex things, but it doesn't mean that you're losing them. You're not going to lose them. So
that's so beautiful. And I wanted to add something. I'm not a therapist at all, but I've seen from an Ayurvedic lens, because a lot of my work is around mental and emotional well-being. When we fight these authentic feelings, you loved someone, even if someone had a traumatic relationship with the person they lost, it's still nuanced and complicated. So don't judge yourself. Guilt will come up every now and then. Regret will come up. Embrace it for that. Don't fight it. You're a human being. That just proves you loved, you were mad, and you loved and you laughed. People feel guilty when even when they laugh. And I'm like, no, you're laughing today, you'll cry tomorrow. This is going to be life. It's no longer you. When you lose a loved one, you're no longer that person. And the more we fight it, the harder we make it on ourselves. That it's just change. Grief transforms us. You were not ready for it. No one can ever prepare for it. I have a friend whose, mom died of cancer, and it was very interesting. He was like, his was anticipatory. They never knew when she would go, but it still impacted him. He knew this, it was inevitable. Both my parents were gone like this. It was unexpected. Mom, very young. I didn't even get to say a bye. Like by the time I was in the flight, she was gone, right? So completely unanticipated. So you could say, oh, you were not expecting. No, that's not true. He was expecting it for 6 months, yet it completely transformed his life. So that's the grief is the price we pay for love. And for those of you who have had complicated relationships with the people you love, there's nothing to be ashamed about. We can't live life thinking, oh, if this tomorrow happens, this is how we should behave. That's too curated. Life has to be organic. What a privilege to be alive.
Yes. And recognize it now, because
Right.
then you can use that in your relationships and everything as you're doing it now. So, no regrets. Have no
Yes.
regrets. Do what you feel you should be doing. And then you won't have those regrets, right?
Fair. Beautifully said.
Yeah, you have so many things available, Shweta. Thank you. On your site, everything will be in the show notes, of course. What are you up to now? What's your day look like, or what do you have coming up in the future here?
Every day is different, literally. This is very busy season for events. So I do a lot of speaking around stress, Ayurveda, gut health, grief. But I have a new book coming out next year. It's all about Ayurveda and stress management. So I'll share the name with you. I do that. Teaching right now. It's midterms next week. So like changing hats, and I'm very grateful for it because, it gives me just enough time to recharge, but not enough time to get stuck in that space of, oh, how do I anchor myself?
Mhm.
So I'm teaching, I'm writing, I write for magazines, I'm doing speaking at health conferences. I'm in Mumbai next month, speaking at the World Marketing Conferences, talking about Ayurveda and branding. So it's all of this good stuff and just a good community of people. I think when we go through grief term, I feel for a lot of us, our life becomes cleaner because you
Mhm.
start looking for purpose. So there's this community, my tribe of people who I also like to spend good amount of time with. It nourishes my heart. So yes, and there's also my podcast. It's called The Grounded Leader. It's bringing Ayurveda into your leadership, which is, and I think everybody is a leader. Even a 2-year-old is a leader in the life of their parents, right? So it's how mindfulness and holistic living, without that, there is no success or well-being in our lives.
I love how that flows through every facet of what you do, too, and it,
Right.
of course, can apply to every portion of your life.
Yes. Thank you. And if anyone is navigating sleep issues, I have a free guide on my website. If you go to shwetavikram.com, you can just sign up for a free sleep guide. It's filled with Ayurvedic tips because with the holiday season around the corner, this is Vata season in Ayurveda. Insomnia is big for a lot of people. For those grieving, sleep is one of the first thing that gets hit. But when we
Yes.
sleep is when we heal, our body replenishes, our brain rests. But oftentimes people are like, I don't know. So Habits Over Motivation, this guide has simple Ayurvedic tips that can, at least get started until such time that you're speaking to a specialist about sleep issues.
Hmm. Wonderful. I have a good friend who's struggling with that right now. I know that. And so I'll forward the information to him for sure.
Thank
And
you.
Shraddha, thank you so much. This has been, I love these conversations because I learn so much, and it's very therapeutic for me, this whole process of what I'm doing here. And so you've contributed to that, and I appreciate that very much.
Thank you so much, Tom. It was really nice to talk to you. I loved how real and informal it felt. So I really appreciate you for the work that you're doing and for holding space for these conversations, because the different voices you bring on your podcast, everyone has their own unique experience. And even if one person says, oh, I feel heard and visible, that's what I've been going through, I think the world starts to heal. One person, one family, one community, one neighborhood at a time.
Yes. And that's what we want for them, right? This is why we
Yes.
do what we do. And we just want you to experience the goodness that we do at times,
Right.
in the context of everything that there's goodness out there, and we just want to
Right.
spread that. So, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll make sure to get all the information out about what you're doing and the future things as well. So just make sure you keep me up to date on that too. Okay.
I will. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Heroes in Grief podcast. If you'd like access to any of the links that we discussed in today's show, you can find them in the show notes. There's also a link there to support the podcast if you care to. And there is an email link for me there. I'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show or what you thought about the show. You really can help out this podcast to get to more people if you subscribe, rate, or review it in whichever way your platform provides. Each week, Heroes in Grief is released on Sunday, so look for new episodes there. Thank you again for listening to Heroes in Grief.